Hello world and Grandmaster Painter. Today I'm going to be doing a video on how I would make wasteland trees. I meant to post this earlier, so sorry about the delay about that. It feels like forever since we talked about it. But I've been away hunting. My wife's been on leave, so I've been spending time with her out in the bush. So let's go see how I make my wasteland trees. So here's the first one that I've done, and I used just one of the thicker twigs from my collection that I've got, and I just gave it kind of a whitewash with some really watered down white acrylic paint, and then I kind of decided that it needed a little bit of extra colour, and so I put a really thin down wash of some browns and kind of washed over certain areas just to give it a bit of interest. I'll show you a picture of some driftwood that I took, which I was kind of trying to emanate, but it's a little bit difficult to get the texture of it because it's quite kind of lined, as you'll see here. So the next one is one I decided to do, which I decided to paint black because I had some pictures of some reference pictures from some trees in the Namib desert. I'll show you a photograph of one now, which I thought looked really cool. The blackness, kind of scorched looking trees against the red earth, I thought looked really kind of barren, wastelandish, and kind of, you know, cool. So I decided to paint this twig just straight black with acrylic paint, just full strength, and it's kind of a different shape from a different kind of bush, and I thought it would make it look quite dramatic and cool. So that's what I did for that one. Now for both of these, first and one I did in this one, I used some pumice sand that has other little rocks and broken up pieces of pumice in it for the bases, just to give it kind of like just a dead, nothing's going to grow here kind of colour to the ground, and it's sandy, and I don't know if you can see on this video, but I did I kind of did make a little mound around the tree to kind of emanate like a wind-swept look, like the wind had swept the sand around the base and kind of made a hollow around one side so that it almost like sand dunes, I guess. I looked at a lot of pictures of sand dunes and decided not to go with too many textures on the sand just yet. I wanted to work on the trees, but that's what I did for those ones. So for the third tree that I did the same technique as the first one. I washed it with some white. I chose a really interesting looking twig that had some real interest to it, and I decided that I would do some other things to the base to make it a little bit more interesting, just to see how it would look. So I used some black sand, which I think is probably volcanic glass from our lake, collected from around our lake that I have close by, Lake Taupo. And so it kind of glitters because it's little bits of glass. It's really awesome. And I decided that that would look really cool, and also I wanted to give a bit more interest, so I put a little skeleton of a creature down in the sand and kind of made the sand look like it was going to kind of blow over the top of it and make it look like it was buried, half buried in the sand. Now it did look a little different, and I'll put a photograph up now just to show how it looked before I put the sand on, and I did quite a lot of work. I made some little vertebras and other things, and I wanted it to kind of poke out of the sand a bit more, but unfortunately I couldn't get my glue to go into the space under the ribs, so I ended up using quite a watered down PVA, and what happened was that moved up into the sand and made the sand a lot thicker in that area, so it covered all the stuff that I worked on so that it's not visible, unfortunately. But hey, I don't know. What do you guys think? Does it still look alright? Or, I mean, you can't really tell what the skeleton is right now, so yeah. So the other thing that I did to it to make it a little bit more interesting, and I know that there probably wouldn't be any leaves left on this tree, but I wanted to have a little bit more interest, was to make some leaves kind of dangling from a couple of the branches. I don't know if you can see those quite well. I'll just see if I can get it to focus. Kind of dangle from the edges of the branches just to make it look like, oh yes, this is a dead tree in a wasteland, nothing's going to grow here. And I put some on the base as well. One's not quite dry, you can see the PVA around it there. But I decided that that looked pretty cool, even if it's not that realistic. It just looks a little bit more interesting. So yeah, that's what I did for that. And so basically, I won't go into great detail on how I did the trees, because I basically chose some twigs and kind of whitewashed them and then stuck them to the bases. So I'll show you what I did with the bases if anybody wants to see that. So the bases I used were bits of foam that I shaped, and then I glued them down to some black card just so that the foam didn't kind of chip off. And I learnt this technique from the terrain tutor, who is fantastic. I've learnt a lot from him, and if you haven't seen his channel, go and check him out. He's got so many great tips and so many easy way of doing things, and he's great for people who are starting out. And he has a Facebook group as well, which I'm a part of, and we all share our terrain pieces and what we're doing and how we do them and things like that. So if you haven't checked him out or you haven't seen his Facebook group, go and have a look. He's the terrain tutor, and I'll put a link to his YouTube page in the description box. So go have a look at that. So this is just a basic piece of foam that I cut, and just something that was with some packaging. It's grey, so you can't really see it. Sorry, I've already gone over it with. This is a textured acrylic medium. It's got sand mixed into it. So I used that to cover the top of it, just to make it a little bit more kind of stronger, and also so that it won't kind of break off and it won't get holes in it so easily and things like that. So I did that, and then I didn't paint it a colour. I probably should have, but I just did 2 layers of my sand on top, and it didn't really show through, so that was lucky. But yeah, I think it's better to paint underneath just so that you have some depth of colours and things. Unfortunately, I didn't do that to show you. So all I did next was, because it's foam, it's real easy to just poke your little tree right into the foam and it sticks there. And I didn't actually glue mine in because I used some glue and things around the bases so that it could build up to look like that kind of sand dune effect. So I didn't glue them in, but so what I did next was I built up some spackle to make a little hill. So I'll just show you quickly how I did that. Okay, so this is what I used, and I have shown it in a previous video. I just bought it from a hardware store. I think it was like $3. New Zealand dollars. And the terrain tutor uses this to kind of texture his bases too, so if you want to learn how to get really cool textured bases, check out some of his videos on that. So all I'm doing is taking my spatula and kind of just building up some ground kind of behind, because of course if you're going to glue down some sand, it's not going to build up very easily and it'll just be flat. Now I think flat ground is a little bit kind of boring. Things need to be a bit more interesting in life. If you're going to make something, it's got to be cool to look at, right? And you want to like admire your work and be like, wow, that's really awesome. So that's my take on it anyway. So it just built up kind of like a little hill behind it. I hope you can see that with all the white glare that I can see on my camera. And then I just kind of eased it down on the sides, because if wind's blowing sand, it's gonna kind of, I mean, you can see it in snowdrifts and stuff as well, I guess. If you have a look at some pictures online, you can kind of see that there's like a gap where the wind's blown the sand or snow around the tree, but then where the tree's blocking the wind, there's kind of a little dip. So that's basically what I'm trying to show. And usually it's kind of round too, like a little circle, so there's like a little round hole in the middle. And that's pretty much it. And of course you can make all kinds of things with the spackle. So after the spackle's dried, then I would just add the sand like you would normally with any kind of turf or what have you. Just PVA glue over the whole thing. If you wanted to paint it first to give it some depth of colour, then I would do that with, like, for that kind of coloured sand that I used, I would probably do like a, I don't know, like a chocolate brown or a bit of a darker kind of greyish tone than this one here. And then I just PVA'd the ground down basically, and I got the little leaves for this one here. I glued down using a method I learnt from some people who do miniature kind of plants, and they make them for doll houses really. And I use this method where you dip the small item that you're wanting to glue on, you dip it in PVA, then you dip it into super glue, and then you place it on the area you want to glue it to for a couple of seconds, and the super glue will immediately hold the item there, and then the PVA will give it kind of a strength to stay there, more of a kind of elastic grip rather than the super glue, which is quite brittle and can snap off. So the little leaves I used are actually, where are they? The little leaves I used are actually tiny little ferns, dried ferns, that I collected while out in the bush. I can get one out. There we go. It's actually much bigger than this. This is only a small part of it, and I just break off these little pieces which look just like leaves. It's so handy, like that. And then they are already dried brown, so, and shiny, so they already look like dried leaves, which is really handy. And I've got quite a few little bits in here. So I hope that was helpful, and I hope that those were the kind of trees that you were looking for, Grandmaster. I hope that people can tell me whether they are any good for Wasteland Trees. I had a really hard time finding reference photos for Wasteland Trees, so my imagination just had to take over. So Let me know, and I hope you enjoyed it, and thanks for watching. Okay, bye.